can you read the table of contents for your new book to us?
Sure. Introduction: Why your kids are saying unalive. How to play linguistic whack-a-mole. Sticking out your gyat for the Rizzler. No, because what happened to your attention? Why everybody sounds the same online. The algorithm really knows me. Word-pilled slang maxing. It's giving appropriation. What are we wearing this summer? Okay, boomer. And finally, are we cooked?
This is the Culture Study Podcast, and I'm Anne Helen Peterson.
And I'm Adam Tok. I'm a linguist, content creator, and author of the new book, Algospeak, How Social Media is Transforming the Future of Language.
All right. So when I heard about your book, I was like, oh, this is so perfect. We actually just recorded an episode the other day about accents and dialects with a linguist, but we didn't talk about the way that internet talk and internet slang and memes and all those sorts of things are really infiltrating the way that we speak today. And someone who is my age, I'm 44, is not an expert in all of this. Like, I learn all of these things from my friends' kids. Like, that's how I heard about Riz.
That's where you have to be tapped into. I have to, constantly make sure I'm keeping a pulse check on what the middle schoolers are saying. Otherwise, you're not actually tapped in. Yeah.
Okay, so as a linguist, how did you first get interested in internet slang and how it shows up offline?
I've been interested in linguistics for a while, studied linguistics in college and started making linguistics videos. And then I started getting really interested in how the internet affects speech because I'm also a content creator. And I felt my own speech rerouting around the algorithm and understanding, wow, I can't say certain things. I feel pressured to say other things.
Yep.
And then the more I looked into it, the more I'm thinking, wow, algorithms are this new infrastructure underlying language change. That's fascinating. And slang also is just interesting separately because the conduits of where language comes from is also the conduits of how our culture is being changed. And there's something really interesting there if you look at the patterns of where our words are coming from.
Yeah. So, I used to work at BuzzFeed as a journalist, and it was so interesting. We always did A/B testing with different headlines and that sort of thing. And sometimes you had to really test the waters in terms of can we use a slang term? Will this parse for the audience that we're trying to reach? And then once a phrase started working, and this was especially true with the more list level stuff, all the headlines were using it, right?
Yeah,
to the point that
right.
it got you used it all the time to the point that it wasn't meaningful anymore, or it was, as we would say now, cringe, which actually I feel like kids don't say that anymore because now older adults say cringe.
The A/B testing your headlines is fascinating because social media relies on sensationalism. The logic of these platforms is let's get as much attention as possible so we can commodify that attention, sell people's data, sell them ads, right? That's what these platforms do. They bake in attention incentives. And now influencers have to think about metrics like retention, how long people watch your videos, or things like likes, comments, shares. And it's unavoidable even off of social media. Even if you're not, the New York Times now also A/B tests its headlines. This is something people don't know, that journalists can't choose their own headlines. They go with the headline that they think gets the most clicks, and then they actively test in real time, and then they go with the headline that gets more clicks. And that doesn't feel like neutral objective reporting, which is the supposed mission of the New York Times, right? So, but it's also necessary in the social media age. And it starts with companies like BuzzFeed, which are social media first, and they understand uniquely how to operate in that ecosystem. But the fact of the matter is, we have to be communicating in a way that grabs more attention than maybe in the past.
Yeah, and I think back to the headlines that we used to use, I used to see in print newspapers, right? It was always very much descriptive because you already had their attention captured, right? They were sitting in front of the newspaper. And maybe they would gloss a story and one over another, but it'd be local man meets dog. And the image would be doing work if there was an image accompanying it, and the lead would be doing some work. That's the first sentence of it.
Attention's always been necessary for humans to be interested in something. Like a teacher still has to get attention from their students if they want to convey a concept. And I, as an educational creator, I feel like maybe that's compounded a little bit. Maybe the closest analogy is yellow journalism in the 19th century, which is essentially the newspaper equivalent of clickbait and rage bait, which is stuff you see online now.
Oh, totally. How do you see headlines? And even, I think you're particularly attuned to this as a content creator, not even the titles of videos, but what comes up, the the frozen screen. What's the name for that? Like the screen that appears when you're going through TikTok or when you're going through YouTube with like text on it.
The thumbnail?
Yeah, like the thumbnail, like that
Oh,
has,
sure.
and it like I see those. You like it's not necessarily the title
And
of the video.
YouTubers test their thumbnails also. They A/B test that. They see which one is getting more engagement over this interval of time, and then they go with that one as well. So it's all behind the scenes. You don't really think about this stuff when you're clicking on things or passively watching, or when you're in this scroll state where you don't really have this analytical lens turned on about what you're consuming. But there's all these layers of marketing being thrown at you, even when it doesn't seem like it's marketing.
So in your book, you talk about how, and I have experienced this because the way that publishing works, it's not like publishing on the internet, right? Like you finish your book, and then it has to go through copy edits, and then it has like the long ramp up to publication. So there's things that you write about that seem last year-ish.
Totally. I mean, the chapter sticking out your gyob for the Rizzler, that's a meme from October 2023.
Right.
It's thankfully not a book about, what these words mean or like the words themselves. It's sort of more of an exploration into the algorithmic medium that all language now evolves through, sort of laying out this picture, this blueprint of this is now an infrastructure underlying how language evolves. The algorithm is going to be affecting all words, and this Rizzler thing is a case study that we can look at that's actually really useful for understanding, oh, wow, if a word is trending, creators will hop onto that trend and then make it more viral than it otherwise would have been. And then it becomes like more people are perceiving it. It becomes more of a genuine fascination, which the algorithm then pushes more, which more creators hop onto. And so it's a positive feedback loop. And that pattern we saw with the Rizzler song and the Skibbity stuff, that's still ongoing. It happened with Italian Brainrot. It's happening now with the Dubai Labubu Crumbl cookie matcha performative male memes. I don't know if you're on that side of TikTok.
I only know about it because of you. But yes.
But there's constantly sort of this treadmill happening of words are engaging and then creators hop onto these trends and then they become Brainrot. And that's kind of a pattern we keep on seeing.
Before we move forward, I do want to define brain rot because I think that is something.
Yes, that's very important. Yeah,
that people kind of throw around that isn't well defined. So, how do you think about it?
There's a few definitions, and it's important to recognize that some people use it in the sense of something that rots your brain. Mm-hmm. However, I think that's the less used definition. I think it's more frequently referring to a meme aesthetic of nonsensical repetition. Yeah. So there's sort of an absurd oversaturation of slang words. When you say skibbity riz gyat Ohio, that's brain rot because those words don't really mean anything, but because they're funny, because they're in this class of words that point back to algorithmic oversaturation. When you say Dubai chocolate Labubu Crumbl cookie, that's funny because they're in this class of words that points back to consumption, but at the same time, the fact that we're inundated with consumptive language. And it's sort of a meta critique of the fact that these words are being thrown at us by the algorithm.
Yeah. And we're going to get in our questions as we go through. We're going to talk a little bit more, too, about how these words get co-opted by advertisers to entice more consumption, and then that gets satirized as well. So let's start with our first question. And I think we can continue to define terms as we go along. This one comes from Quinn.
There seems to be two forms of internet spillover that I've seen in my everyday life. The first seems to come primarily from memes, the loud, kind of obnoxious references that very often get used as intergenerational jokes or for comedy, while the second comes from more subtle shifts, the site-specific changes in grammar and syntax that indicate an in-group or a subculture. While the first is what I usually see pointed at for can't understand the youth these days purposes, I'm wondering if it's the second that actually has more impact on communication in real life and in person, and how the subtle and honestly not so subtle language shifts contribute to creating in-groups with actual social and political consequences.
All right. This is a pretty nerdy linguistics question. What do you make of it?
I think that's an incredibly astute observation. There's the known knowns. There's the stuff we can point at and be like, yeah, there's middle schoolers saying skibbity. That's a clear example of social media changing your language. But it's the more subconscious even like vibes that you feel. the fact that when I'm in a bar with my friend and there's a TikTok song playing on the radio and that TikTok song is now affecting our headspace. I mean, we know music changes your actual vibe in a situation. If the music turns off, suddenly the vibe shifts. So the music is a vibe that you feel in that exact moment, even when you're offline. But that song, you're only hearing it and it's only affecting your headspace in that moment because it was a good 30-second soundbite for TikTok. So what does that mean that that's affecting our headspace in that moment? And maybe I can sing along to the song because I'm on TikTok and my friend can too, and that affects our ability to relate to each other. Maybe my friend can't sing along to the song and now we're in a different group, and it can define in-groups and out-groups in subtle vibe-based ways offline where we can't even point to the sort of the unknowns, right? You can easily see the knowns from the words that stick out. In linguistics, we have the concept of obtrusivity, words that poke out more than you can point at. And the Brainrot is a great example of that. We literally semantically distinguish these words as like different or special. At the same time, social media popularizes a lot of slang words and grammatical structures that are under the radar. The word low-key became an adverb in the last 3 years. And
right.
It was sort of circulating in African-American English, but it really became mainstream, and that was a low-key. It was literally a low-key example of a word changing subtly. It wasn't thought of as brain rot, but it's now affecting the vocabularies of every Gen Z and Gen Alpha person. There's small grammatical structures. It's giving, the way you blank, not you blank. It's all these are also less obvious, but they're still there.
So I love that in your answer, you use something that I think has actually happened more in a high-key way, which is the use of vibes. So I think even 5 years ago, people were not saying the vibes are bad, the vibes are good.
Yeah.
And I see it at first, one of the first examples that I can remember is there was an article, I think in 2021, 2022 about the vibe shift, right? That there was just something happening in Manhattan. There was a shifting vibe. And we now know what was happening. It was kind of a turn to the right amongst younger Gen Z, what was going on. But at the time, the only way you could describe it was a vibe shift.
Yeah.
And then I've seen that now used, journalists use it all the time. Podcasters use it. I was just a weekend with a bunch of other 40-year-olds. We use it as a lingua franca, but it took a while for that to change. Or my mom used it the other day. The vibes were good at this concert.
Yeah,
and
wow.
How does that spread in a way that makes people feel like they're part of that conversation? It's a way for my mom to signal I was doing something that you would have liked. It's not just descriptive, it's also using the language that I would have used to describe the event.
So I just pulled up the Google Trends for vibe shift, and it really peaked in 2022.
Yeah.
And then remained kind of in our vocabulary. Fascinating. I do remember the word vibe really entering my vocabulary at that time. Was it because of that New York Times article? I'll have to look more into this. This is fascinating. Yeah. I think there is generally more of a cultural awareness of vibes. And also memes, for example. Memes used to be an esoteric academic field of study. In 1976, Richard Dawkins published this book, The Selfish Gene, and the meme referred to a self-replicating unit of culture. Yep. And then the fact that we just started using meme to mean funny image. Vibe, is actually a field of study in phenomenology and kind of affect theory. It's understanding how a person's orientation of a situation affects their disposition, and it's actually incredibly important. And I use it both in a personal and an academic sense, I think. Yeah. But the fact that same thing that happened with the word meme, the word vibe also became kind of more popularly conscious because maybe social media and the internet are so profoundly affecting the influx of memes and vibes we're getting.
Yeah. I love that we somehow worked phenomenology into this. I bet a bunch of phenomenologists are this is an imprecise wielding of vibes, but also that would be an interesting thing to study is how people use it in a more and less precise ways.
I think a good linguist should start with vibes because it comes down to what is a person's subjective experience of a situation, and that means how do we interpret things in our own minds.
Yeah.
There are words we just use in different contexts, right?
Yeah,
you'll talk differently
totally.
to your grandmother and you'll talk differently to your friends and you might use different words. You'll talk differently online than offline.
Yeah.
My book opens with the example of unalive and how
Yes.
there's kids in middle schools now talking about Hamlet contemplating unaliving himself in their essays. And that feels jarring and because it's an online word meant to dodge algorithmic censorship since the word kill is suppressed. And now it's being used offline, and that new context feels kind of wrong to people because we perceive rules about when certain words should be used.
Right. But for them, for middle schoolers, if this has been one of their primary means of accessing people talking about killing other people, and it always is to unalive someone, like, of course it slips into the way that they speak.
Well, in fact, what I talk about is that it's taken on a genuine euphemistic function offline, and we've been euphemizing death forever. We say things like passed away or kick the bucket also sounds a little funny, kind of like unalive. So, I mean, how new is that really? It just found this new function. But, it brings up the standard conversations. Like, does this trivialize the topic of suicide? Or does it make it easier for these kids to express themselves? What are the vibes, really?
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Today's episode is sponsored by fastgrowingtrees.com. I'm so excited for this. Fall planting season is somewhat intimidating for me because I'm always like a little bit exhausted. And also if you pick the wrong tree and you don't they can freeze over winter, it sucks. And oftentimes you're like, where do I start? I know that I want something. I don't know exactly what size. I don't know how fast it's going to grow. I don't know how much light it needs. Fastgrowingtrees.com. I know it's very obvious what it does. It gives you fast growing trees, but they also have all of these plant experts that can help you find the perfect fit for your space.
And not just trees, shrubs, grasses, annuals, perennials. I haven't ordered anything from fastgrowingtrees.com yet, but I'm going to. But I've actually used it for a long time to help me research because the search functions can get so granular. So not just searching by zone, but you can narrow it down to heat tolerant, deer resistant, pollinator friendly, and there's just so much information.
And also the plants are very high quality. I think some places that you order online, you get things that arrive in not great shape. And these arrive in fantastic shape. I just ordered a bunch of pink muhly grass. I might be saying muhly wrong. It is fantastic. I've had it in other places in my garden, and I need to replace some other grasses that are way too tall for their space and that I should not have put there, but I didn't have fastgrowingtrees.com to guide me on what I need. Also, Fast Growing Trees Alive and Thrive guarantee ensures that your plants arrive happy and healthy and not looking like crap like some other places. All plants and trees are locally grown in the U.S., ensuring they will thrive in your yard. It's really important.
And every plant that comes from fastgrowingtrees.com comes with instructions and tips for care so that the plants will grow to their fullest potential.
This fall, they have the best deals for your yard and up to half off on select plants and other deals. Listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code CULTURE at checkout. That's 15% off fastgrowingtrees.com using the code CULTURE at checkout. Now is actually the perfect time to plant. Use CULTURE to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. You can check out the link in the show notes and support the show. This episode is brought to you by Mosh. Mosh you might have heard about on Shark Tank. It was founded by Maria Shriver and her son, Patrick Schwarzenegger, and they joined forces with some of the world's top scientists and functional nutritionists to go beyond your average protein bar. Each Mosh bar is made with ingredients that support brain health, like lion's mane collagen and omega-3s. Mosh bars also actually taste great and come in 9 different excellent flavors, including the 3 new plant-based flavors, chocolate chip cookie, which I really like, hazelnut chocolate chip, and peanut chocolate chip. Mosh also donates a portion of all proceeds from your order to fund gender-based health research through the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. Because 2/3 of all Alzheimer's patients are women, and Mosh is working closely to close the gap between women and men's health research. If you want to find ways to give back to others and fuel your body and your brain, Mosh bars are the perfect choice for you. Head to moshlife.com/culture to save 20% off plus free shipping on the Best Sellers Trial Pack or the new Plant-Based Trial Pack. That's 20% off plus free shipping on either the Best Sellers Trial Pack or the Plant-Based Trial Pack at moshlife.com/culture. Thank you, Mosh, for sponsoring this episode. Our next question will let us talk about origins a little bit more. Let's hear from Maggie.
I feel like so much of it comes from Black and brown queer people and gets watered down or removed from its original context, but my question is there a way to tell if someone has different political beliefs based upon the slang they're using? Beyond the racist or fascist dog whistles, how can we tell if the person, quote-unquote, clocking that T voted for Trump?
So first, I think we should talk about the first part of this question, which is about the appropriative component. And you have a whole section of the book on this, so I'd love to hear you
the
talk
chapter,
about it.
It's giving appropriation. Language tends to follow the conduits of what is seen as cool or funny. Unfortunately, African-American English is seen as either cool or funny by a lot of people. So it follows the conduits of social prestige, of popularity, but it also follows like people mocking it and making fun of it. And then we have all these like slang words hitting the mainstream. A lot come from the ballroom community, particularly this queer Black Latino space in New York City in the 1980s. It was like words like slay, serve, ate, queen, yas. All those are now like mainstream Gen Z language, which I think is also when we apply labels like that, we sort of lose touch with where they came from. And then there's also the hood irony memes, which are just kind of making fun of like Cap, that those all kind of like spread through that kind of medium. So there's a few ways these words filter into the mainstream. And that question is also fascinating because there is definitely like a sociolinguistic indicator when people say things. I would tend to assume that if someone's talking about clocking tea, they still trend more liberal. But the fact is, middle schoolers now are using this phrase all over the country with no idea where it came from. And, they're going to grow up to have all kinds of political affiliations. So maybe it's lost that power as a social indicator, especially as it's removed from context. This is something that just happens because the internet context collapsed. I did a video once and like the red heart, versus blue heart. Blue heart is used more by Democrats. Red heart is used more by MAGA. That's just a clear example. But I don't know. There's like every single word is used at a slightly different frequency by different subsets of the population.
So I feel like this would sound ridiculous to you because you're someone who is always paying attention to these things. But so many people I knew in liberal circles were like, what? Let's go Brandon. Like really just did not get it because they would see it on bumper stickers and that sort of thing. And to me, that is one of the prime examples of like a very MAGA organic meme that was not scrutable to people who are not deep into that culture. Can you explain it a little bit?
Right. Well, that's a clear kind of, it's a minced oath. A minced oath is when we turn something serious, which is fuck Joe Biden. That's what Let's Go Brandon stands for. But because somebody misinterpreted that at one point, it turned into a minced oath. And we see a similar thing. I examine how the word sex turns into the word segs. That's a minced oath as well. It also marks the social group of people who are talking about sex on the algorithm. So like doctors and sex educators and risque creators, all those people will use the word segs or, have in the past.
To avoid getting flagged or buried by the algorithm.
Again, we're back to like algorithms affecting, through censorship, how we speak. But so that marks also a social group. You can't avoid that anytime there's some kind of exclusive anti-language happening. In the same way, Let's Go Brandon definitely marks a social group if you're saying that.
Right. And an in-group, out-group. This kind of is going back to the first question of like, what sort of speak are you using that immediately hails someone into your social group?
A shibboleth is a linguistic term that identifies someone.
Yeah. Was there anything like, you were saying earlier that there are things that people start using in middle school that they don't realize that it signifies differently to people in their 20s or 30s, or that it has political valences or even ideological ones. Can you think of anything that you said all the time when you were a teen or a tween that you didn't have any idea of what was going on with it? I mean, there were a lot of things that I said.
Well, I remember like bet and cap trending in like 2016, 2017. I was using those words. I didn't know where they came from. There was also like the more obvious obtrusive trends like yeet, bay, fam, on fleek. Those, also come from African-American spaces and were popularized on Vine, which I think is an important thing to study if we're looking at the precursor of TikTok.
Yeah. So talk more about Vine.
Well, it was the first like video-based platform. What's different about it though is there were no personalized recommendations. Everybody got shown the same vines.
Yep.
And they did. Like, there's something about this video medium that's very compelling at allowing ideas to spread, and ideas did spread on Vine. I think the fact that TikTok can now show people different things allows more memes to incubate under the radar in a lot of different communities at the same time. Vine was also poor at like monetizing, and I think they shut down due to monetization issues. But it kind of laid out that framework for future companies. And so Musical.ly was the obvious successor of ByteDance. The company in China bought Musical.ly, turned it into TikTok, and kind of combined that with their sophisticated algorithm that they built for their Chinese app, Douyin, which the Chinese government censors a lot of stuff. There was a lot of infrastructure in place to detect specific keywords and give personalized recommendations. They ported that over to Musical.ly, combined that with the kind of Vine format of short form video, and created TikTok. And now all these other apps are just trying to copy it. Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. Right. I think TikTok is still like the most sophisticated algorithm. People love that feeling of personalization, that feeling like your algorithm knows you.
Do you agree with the argument that I've seen elsewhere that Vine created so much of the vernacular, like the foundational vernacular that now structures TikTok?
I think TikTok does so much more. I can maybe list on like 10 fingers like the words that really came from Vine. There's like memes, and it was definitely pivotal to that period in time. I think TikTok plays so much larger of a role because it's that difference between no algorithm and algorithm. It's the difference between Because the Internet, which is this fantastic book people should read, this old era of the internet. And now we're in the new era of the internet. Algospeak, people should get that one too. But it's how algorithms are now creating in groups, and like they amplify natural human trends. So we naturally, like you said, we want to create in groups and out groups. They create echo chambers and filter bubbles that make us feel like we're part of something collectively effervescent. We naturally like fads and memes and phenomena that fascinate us, and then algorithms push that and amplify it. And then creators, again, like that process I was talking about that I call the engagement treadmill, creators like hijack that in an attempt to go viral themselves. Algorithms naturally are better at censoring language, which is literally what linguists call a productive force, something that produces more language. The fact that the algorithm is censoring words like kill and sex means that we come up with new words. We're linguistically more creative than we would have been without the algorithm. Yeah.
I think of it as like Vine. If you go back to super early cinema, like the early shorts of early cinema, like they figured out how to make something really funny within, a minute. And then you have these longer films that combined some of that structure of like, how do you make something really funny in a minute, and expanded into 20 minutes, expanded into 30 minutes. And obviously TikToks aren't that long, but it's taking some of like those building blocks of like, how do you make video funny? How do you make people stop and actually not swipe on to the next one and do that like more effectively in a way that I don't think YouTube ever was that successful at least in its original
No,
form.
I mean, Vine still like ranked things based on engagement. And I guess the YouTube homepage does that too. There's more going on with YouTube than you might think.
Yeah.
But the premise is different. The premise is short form video versus long form video. It's like already we're starting with short form video, something you actively engage with and watch like lying in bed on your side or whatever. Long form video is something you put on in the background while you're cooking. And that's there's no like 5 to 10 minute videos anymore, for example, because the companies figure out what the business model is. Like it's literally one's background passive attention and one's active attention. And YouTube started disincentivizing like 5 to 10 minute videos. Nobody does it anymore. And so you'll have either you're really grabbing someone's attention or you're in the background.
Okay, this is another one about internet slang coming into real life. This is from Joy.
I am fascinated by the easy way that saying something as a bit or a mocking joke becomes a part of a person's lexicon. My 30-something-year-old partner keeps asking me and the cats, "Are we cooked, chat?" It's a newly hilarious bit, but I do foresee it becoming as annoying as LMAO and LOL were back in 2017. Why does this happen? And how can we use words within context, like just online, without bringing it into our spoken word? Also, on the topic of internet talk, I would love to hear an embarrassing story of a totally inappropriate time you used slang. Maybe a work function, on a date, or talking to grandma.
Okay, so let's talk first about this crossover. And to me, it's like the death of a meme, right? Like when it becomes like so overused. Like that it's no longer...
Certainly when your grandmother starts saying skibbity, you no longer want to say skibbity. There is like a lifespan. When words are obtrusive in that way that they stick out and they get tied to the lifespan of a meme. A meme is a social phenomenon only as long as it remains part of an in-group. And once everybody's in on the joke, it's no longer funny. Now, other words like low key, like I think would stick around because it's not as obviously a meme. If your grandmother might start saying low key, you might even miss it. The sort of words bleeding into vocabulary is a fascinating thing, especially when you use it as like a bit. I remember last fall I made a video on how the word W could be like an adjective. So you could say like, oh, W podcast, W book. And I would just start saying that after everything.
What does that mean?
Stop.
What does that mean?
Well, it just means something's good. It means like, yeah, this is a great. Well, yeah, you can have an L podcast, but you're on a W podcast. It means win, but it doesn't mean win because it doesn't mean win podcast. Win W just took on its own life as a word. I thought it was fascinating. I started using it as a joke with my friends, and then my friends had to like be like, Adam, you got to stop saying this. So even linguists are guilty of it.
No, totally. Can you think of the second part of her question too, where it's like, where people like accidentally use stuff in, I think in work communication, especially with Slack, it's so easy to accidentally.
Yeah,
like,
I've heard some Slack horror stories.
Oh my God.
Well, back to the unalive thing, like one example I opened the book with is last summer, the Seattle Museum of Pop Culture did an exhibit for the 30th anniversary of Kurt Cobain's suicide. And they didn't say that he committed suicide. They didn't say that he killed himself. They said that Kurt Cobain unalived himself at 27. And that was like an egregious example that went viral on Twitter of like, this is not supposed to be used in this context. Right. There was a huge backlash. They had to take down the exhibit. But it's only because of that perception of like, this is not the time or the place to use that word.
That's so interesting. I also think like the thing with, and I think older people are particularly susceptible to this, is they use the like Giphy search in something like Slack or in messaging. They search for like celebration or like a keyword. And then the Giphy that comes up is decontextualized. Like oftentimes the people that I see who use it, they don't know where that's
just like
from.
It's like a minion or something. Like you don't know like what...
It's often a minion.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's
the
from
boomer
like...
GIF needs to be studied. Yeah.
Sometimes it's from a movie that they maybe don't want to be using that particular GIF on like a public or a work channel. And like, how do you think of that sort of decontextualization of memes or GIFs or speech in that way?
Yeah, the context collapse is a huge driver of language change because it causes things to move across context. Because when you perceive that boundary, the word's not going to spread, it's not going to change. But when you start to forget or don't know where something comes from, it makes it that much easier. This is a common thing you see with like, why are so many words coming from the ballroom scene? It's because, well, first of all, there's a natural social phenomenon happening. It starts with Black, Latino, gay people, and then it moves to white gay people, and it moves to the straight white girlfriends of gay men. That's natural, but it might have taken like way longer for those words to reach the mainstream if it wasn't for TikTok. Because now if you're a white girl watching a queer black man say something on TikTok, it's on your For You page. You assume it's for me. You don't think that, oh, maybe the algorithm just like is recommending this to people who statistically are most likely to watch it and make money for the platform. And this actual like person didn't intend this video to be sent to you, but they intended this as in-group language. But now you're interpreting this and you feel like it's okay to say it. And then you do regurgitate it. And now your video does even better. And now there's other like white girls hearing this from another white girl thinking, oh, this is white girl language. It's not, queer black language meant to differentiate queer language from the straight white norms of the English language. And that's how like these words move across filter bubbles.
Yeah, which is not dissimilar from how TikTok dances move across TikTok. Like Taylor Lorenz, I think, wrote like the quintessential piece on how I think it's the Renegade.
Is the Renegade. Charlie D'Amelio kind of appropriated the Renegade from Jalea Harmon, who was a 14-year-old in Atlanta who came up with that dance. Well, I think that was also like a pivotal point in internet culture because it marked when we started attributing the originators of trends. Because of that backlash, before that there wasn't much of a citation kind of culture. For example, when On Fleek was trending in 2014 from Vine user Peaches Monroe, also known as Kayla Newman, nobody credited her. She didn't see a cent of profits. Why would she? It's hard to like really own a word or something, especially when it hits the mainstream. But then you have like people capitalizing on it. Forever 21 releases a brand of On Fleek t-shirts. Ariana Grande raps about being, Nicki Minaj. These people like sing about like on fleek and then like claim ownership of the word. Nicki Minaj got into an argument with another artist about this person was selling pretty on fleek t-shirts, and Nicki felt like that was her property, she should get money for it. In the meantime, nobody's paying Kayla Newman.
Right.
That was Vine culture. Right now, I think things are different with TikTok culture. Last year, when Jules LeBron popularized the word demure, mindful cutesy, there's that whole trend. There was a lot more of a push to recognize her. People did pay her for things. She was able to pay for her transition. So there's been a vibe shift in that sense as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think there is this like really heightened understanding of language as intellectual property. But it's actual
tenuous. I don't know like how much that's true. Like you can't once the word escapes, like you can't really control where it goes at all. I mean, it seems good that there's a cultural attitude of like, this person came up with something cool, let's recognize them for it. And there's also, that cultural attitude of, this word serves an important function to this group. Maybe I shouldn't use that word. Maybe there's more of an awareness of that. I'm not going to tell you ever to use or not use a word. But, my hope with etymology is like, now you know where these come from. You can make your own call because culture is a subjective thing.
What about the way, because I think that TikTok is particularly skilled at reproduction this way with using sounds from other videos.
Yeah.
Some people, I know it's weird to imagine, but some people don't know how TikTok works. Can you explain how you use a sound to make what would have been in 2008, how our very old school memes, like stuff that you would make on Meme Generator would work?
This is a fascinating thing that differentiates TikTok, that you can categorize things by sound. It comes out of that infrastructure of Musical.ly, which was a music and dance app. Now, on Instagram and YouTube, you can't really do this. All the apps allow you to sort by like hashtag or type of video or something like that. TikTok also allows you to search by sound. You can look up a sound and see all the videos that are similar to it. It also pushes trending sounds far more than the other apps are catching up with this one. But TikTok really laid down the groundwork for this, that if a sound is trending, it'll push that sound. So, for example, in that chapter, Sticking Out Your Gyat for the Rizzler, that was a TikTok sound that also contained these slang words. But when people used that sound under their videos, it was trending. More creators used that sound, which pushed it further, which also pushed the words further. And now you have kind of these words replicating beyond that. It's a deeply audiovisual medium. Like the logic of TikTok revolves around rapidly switching your attention from one sight and sound to another sight and sound. And it's both of those things happening at once. And there's associations you have, imbued kind of notions about what this sound is or how much this sound captivates your attention. Same with certain visual imagery. All of that is kind of tied together. Vibes.
Why is the Instagram Reels algorithm so much more basic than TikTok's?
TikTok is more sophisticated because of they have the advanced kind of AI Chinese infrastructure. Instagram there's interesting stuff happening with Instagram right now. Since January 2025, it has been spewing out a lot more AI, a lot more clearly racist content.
Yes.
Meta loosened their content guidelines. They are now allowing for first more AI generated stuff. And second, they're done with DEI woke, so now you can just post whatever you want. The N-word is like fine. And you get like all these racist AI slop reels. I wrote an article about, there was a reel with 30 million views that depicted a swarm of shirtless black men running towards a KFC, eating fried chicken, and the underlying audio was the N-word repeated over and over again. And that has 30 million views. And it you know why it spread? Because it's sensational. In the same way it's good to get clicks on a headline, this draws eyeballs, and I actually interviewed the creator of that video. I'm like, hey, why are you making this? And they didn't say I'm racist. They are, but like they didn't say that, and I don't think that's why they made the video. They told me I made this video because it's good for getting likes and views. And that's ridiculous to me. That there's sort of a banality of evil going on, banality of the algorithm, that you create the infrastructure for stupidity to replicate, and then it does.
Well, and I just feel like Meta is so good at replicating that. Like, it should know me so well, and yet all it shows me is like bad reels of dogs being like not even that interesting.
Yeah, I've gotten
dog
the
videos.
AI slop cat videos,
or like before and after weight loss stuff, and I'm like, this is not my, like, I am not giving you information that indicates that. Like, it's not at one of those.
Your stated preferences and your revealed preferences.
Unfortunately, but
but our instinctual like reactions to, also it's not that they do show you things that maybe are commodified, but at the same time, there are instinctual reactions you have to things. Rage bait and clickbait. Unfortunately, you will watch rage bait, which isn't something you want to watch. The algorithm is not actually for you in the sense it's not something you want to see, but it's something that you will respond to, which is something that keeps you on the app, which is something they can sell later.
Right. I just think TikTok, the things that it serves me, that it's like, oh, you like this. You love those hooves getting cleaned. Like, that is very, like, that's I do my feel, deepest, darkest
I think Instagram is the least cooked of the platforms. Like, TikTok is the least cooked. Because it's the one where I feel like it is genuinely maybe the most personalized. But at the same time, it's crazy when you're in that flow state, what you don't notice. You don't notice that every third video is literally an advertisement. Because you're in that flow state, you just quickly scroll past it. But if you detach your viewing angle, there's like different ways you can look at your phone. You can look at it like in that absorbed state, or you can pull back a second, scroll and look at what the video is, not at the video itself. Look at what the video is. Every third video is going to be an ad, and start wondering, like, why are these videos presented with the same weighting as other videos? Like, the implicit thing is that all these videos deserve the same recognition. Why are these videos presented in such a fragmentary context? How does that affect our viewing of these messages?
Mm-hmm. And how do they pack in their message in 3 seconds before they know you're going to swipe away? Right?
Well, that is critical as an influencer. 50% of my viewers will leave in the first second unless I make a really compelling hook.
And have you always spoken so quickly?
I am generally a fast talker. My friends can corroborate, but I do talk faster online, and I will, again, talk differently in different contexts. I will not talk this quickly to my grandmother. I want to pack in a bunch of information right now, so that's probably why I'm talking quickly now. Yeah. But online, I will probably talk faster. I'll stress more words to keep you watching my video. I'll retake a single clip if I feel like I wasn't talking fast enough with the right stress. So I'm very extremely deliberate with it. And I talk about that in the influencer accent chapter.
Yep. Yeah. Today's episode is brought to you by Blissy. The other day, my friend came over and she was like, oh, I slept so well last night. It's because I'm sleeping on the Blissy pillowcase that you gave me. Because they sent me two. And I was like, I'll keep one. And then I'll get
Charlie
one to my friend.
Get one.
No, Charlie does not get the skincare secret that dermatologists tell all their clients, which is that you should get rid of cotton pillowcases and use silk pillowcases instead. Charlie does not get zits. He does not have a problem.
It would be wasted on him.
Totally wasted. He needs, who needs this is premenopausal women like me, who is trying to avoid getting unnecessary acne from my filthy cotton pillowcases.
And also keep you cool at night.
It does, which is an added bonus. I'm always too hot. Always. Blissy's pillowcases are so soft, and you can see healthier skin and hair in just weeks. These silk pillowcases are better than satin because satin is made from synthetics, which are rough on hair and skin. There's a reason that satin is often cheaper. These pillowcases also help eliminate frizz, preserve hairstyles, and protect color-treated hair, like mine. The pillowcases come in over 99 colors. I have just like a very tasteful ivory. And because you're a listener, Blissy is offering 60 nights risk-free, plus an additional 30% off when you shop at blissy.com/culturepod. That's BLISSY.com/culturepod and use code culturepod to get an additional 30% off. Your skin and hair will thank you. This episode of the Culture Study Podcast is brought to you by Graza. Okay, so last night we made Charlie's favorite comfort summer meal, which is grilled chicken Caesar salad. He marinates some chicken, and then I take some like ciabatta or baguette and cut it up, and then I put some of the Graza drizzle on both sides, and then he grills that as well. And then you bring in the grilled bread and the grilled chicken, and you cut it all up, let it cool, and just put it on some salad mix and some tomatoes and a little sloppy Caesar dressing. Love it. We talk about all the things that we use Graza for. I'm almost done with all of my bottles because I've used them so much this summer for salads, for grilling, for stir frying, all sorts of things. So there's the frizzle, which you can use on your grill. And I maybe should have used that instead of the drizzle, but whatever. And it's also perfect for frying or crisping. I usually use it for my tofu as well. There's the sizzle, which is just everyday cooking, roasting, marinating, sauteing. And then there's the drizzle, which has a bold, punchy flavor, and it goes great on bread, on ice cream, and your classic potato salad. It's made with only one olive varietal from one region, so there's no mysterious blends. That means a traceable, fresher product without mixing in any lower grade or unknown oils. Also, it comes in the squeeze bottle, which squeezing it on bread, like usually I would have to put it into a little bowl and then I have to like get my little paintbrush thing and paint it all over. Like I can just squeeze it. It's so precise. I freaking love it. And right now you can get 10% off your first order on Graz's site. But I personally suggest grabbing the whole trio. That's all 3 squeezy bottles, sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle. So you're set for every style of cooking. Head to graza.co and use Culture to get 10% off the trio, which includes sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle, and get to cooking your next chef-quality meal. Our next question is a little bit more about how language is seeping into advertisements as well. This one comes from Robin.
I'm a millennial and I see ads all the time now that use internet speak, like, sis, you have been sleeping on this product, etc. It drives me nuts and it feels so obvious and disingenuous, but I'm sure there are trends I used to not notice that used millennial slang to sell me things. Do these ads work on Gen Z? Are ads using more and more informal internet speak to relate to their consumers, or am I just out of the loop for this particular type of language?
Okay, so how do you think of these ads when you see them?
Here's another interesting Google trend for you. Starting in 2021, the word psyop spiked. People are now, and it's maintained at high levels. There's more of a perception that there are psyops occurring than there used to be. And why is that? Again, there's sort of this cultural attitude that something's happening and we're being manipulated and we know that, but we don't know why. There's like these military edits and like they might be psyops. They might just be people capitalizing on this trend or whatever. You see this with the marketing that the buzzword in the creator economy is authenticity. People want things that look relatable, so that does mean leaning into these aesthetics. I think a lot of brands are bad at that. There's a few ones that really do stand out. Like before Duolingo got canceled on TikTok for going AI first, they were incredibly good at tapping into trends and had this whole brand identity going on TikTok. And that I've always kind of felt weird about that. And I actually criticized Duolingo quite a bit in my book because, you see them replicating the African-American English and the slang words, and it's all to sell you more of their shitty product, which is not actually good for language learning. But so even when you know it's a brand, it's Duolingo, oh, it's marketing. Yeah. But there's also a lot of stuff that you don't know is marketing. The influencers plugging this new like cleaning product. Whenever you watch an ASMR video, usually like the thing used to clean the drain is also linked in the TikTok shop or below. Yep. And I mean, you can see that, but maybe you don't think about it as much. You don't even think about how much of the regular news is psyops. I was fascinated while promoting this book, how many because of my incredible publicist, how many of these news opportunities got set up. Like I didn't know about you guys, and my publicist got me in touch. Is that a psyop? I don't know. It's still marketing.
No, that's just publicity.
But I'm here. Well, that's marketing. I'm here marketing for you. So if I'm saying something like interesting, it's because I'm marketing my book on another layer. I do care about spreading interesting ideas, but there's always like layers of marketing and publicity that are happening in varying degrees. That you don't know when you read like this guy's in the New York Times. It's cool that they're writing this article about him. You don't know that this is a publicity campaign that's engineered to sell more copies of my book.
So that's so interesting because I think if anyone who's on the other side who understands how this stuff works, they're like, yeah, most of the time the way that someone ends up like there's an interview with them in the New York Times or you show up on a podcast, like your publicist sent me a press release about the book and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Well, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff happening, and then you consume content, not thinking about all these machinations going on. Yeah. There's a few.
But really that's media studies. Like I used to teach media studies.
I'm so into media studies. Let's talk about like the difference between a play and a television. And there's a lot of people, writers in the early 1900s, completely crashing out, to use another slang word, about how the movie changes our perception, because with a play you can see all the stuff behind the scenes. You can see that, oh, this is acting, this is fake. And when you're watching a movie, you don't think about the producing, you don't think about the casting, you don't think about the directing. You just watch this movie, accept it as a movie, and you lose some of that critical perception. I think also, let's look at the difference now between movies and TikTok. I think when we look at movies, we still know that there is something, presented about this. It gets harder and harder the more absorbing the medium is to be aware of that. And right. When you're in that TikTok flow state, you're looking through an algorithmic gaze that you're not even considering,
Well, and I think this goes back to the original question, right? That part of what these ads are trying to do is to not signal themselves as ads. How do we blend in so that you stay in the algorithm with our ad? And as you were saying, the awareness of TikTok as constructed, it's lessened because we often, at least on Instagram, you have your best friend's baby next to an ad next to news about Gaza, right? All of these are flattened into one stream, context collapse. And on TikTok, I think it still happens. We're still viewing it in that way where it's harder to think of each of these videos as a work of production.
Right. Well, it's kind of the difference to me between product placement and an ad that is an ad. There's a lot of these ads are ads. You still look at them. Sometimes you subconsciously pick up on, there was a Coca-Cola on the TV the other day. I might be more inclined to buy Coca-Cola, but it's not, you don't consciously think about that, but it's just the availability or presence influences your headspace. Same with the product placement, but the product placement is less obvious. You might not even be aware that you looked at an ad. And the same way, a lot of that, it kind of still is happening on social media. So maybe the product placement analogy means it's not any that much worse than it was on TV, but maybe we're watching more of this. I don't know. It's interesting.
Who do you think makes the decision to use these words? People always say, oh, Wendy's has a great intern, running their Twitter account. When no, it's
the intern
committee.
Trope is also right. It's meant to make them sound more relatable. The Gen Z intern running the, I mean, maybe
when
in
it's
some
actually
cases
probably
there
a lot of millennials. There's a room of millennials who are here's what Gen Z is using.
It makes it sound more relatable. So even though you're being advertised to, you're more willing to accept it. One thing I examine in the book is the proliferation of TikTok micro labels for aesthetics, fashions, cottagecore, goblincore, angelcore, clean girl, coquette, baddie. All these are aesthetics. They're packaged as entire lifestyles. There's a style of clothing that's cottagecore, but it's also a style of music, a style of decorating your home. All these are cottagecore. They're also good for the algorithm because now the algorithm has more ways to categorize you as a person, which means they can recommend more personalized content, which means they can better target you as an individual. But also now, conveniently, cottagecore clothing is one click away in the TikTok shop. And because you like that feeling of being in an in-group, you feel special when you get a cottagecore video. You really identify with it. You're the algorithm really knows me, but the algorithm's pushing cottagecore videos because it's trying to sell you cottagecore as a concept.
Yeah. Yes. I think a lot of people listening have seen this or been alienated by it, I think, because sometimes it is pushing so hard and you're really an identity, you have to come to an identity yourself. It's less about I'm being served all of these things and I decide to align myself with all of these purchases. It had an identity is a whole amalgamation of
right.
how I want to be in the world.
Well,
not
I think
just
the existence of a label is circular with identity, because now once a label is out there, you either identify with or against it. You can't ignore the fact that the label is there. And so the more labels there are, the more ways it's impacting our identity, perhaps. It's also interesting to me, at what point does something actually become a psyop? A lot of these cottagecore videos are from actual cottagecore creators who, they do like the aesthetic, but they're replicating it because the algorithm is pushing it. But they don't feel like they're complicit in a psyop, but on some level, it still is a psyop.
When you say psyop, I think of psyop as the Epstein files. That to me, there's much more, there's stuff going on that's more complicated. But you're talking about anything that is sublimated.
Yeah, maybe I'm using a broader definition. It's an attempt to subconsciously sway public opinion about something.
Yeah.
And that to me is, yeah. I mean, that's just sure.
Yeah, so is it is that a way, a word that we use now, or that
I think the way it's colloquially
now?
Used on the internet is not just persuasion, but persuasion when it's not presented as such. Yeah, if I'm open about it, maybe it's less of a psyop, or at least I think we should be doing our psyops in public. I've run a few experiments on my like YouTube followers where I'm like, here, I'm running an experiment on you, and they participate in the experiment, and it works.
So is this stuff that like, I'm just thinking, if something is a psyop, then it's not another thing. Like if we're thinking in these dualities, like, is it understood as opposed to things that are actually authentic?
So I think authenticity is kind of made up in our heads. Like there's no universal axiom
authenticity is a psyop, right?
Yeah, right.
Like,
I mean, everything kind of is on that, level. Yeah. Authenticity is just how good do we feel about being marketed to.
Yes. That is a really good definition. Okay, we have one more question, and it's something that I see all the time with a certain age of person. It's about a type of speech, and Melody's going to read it. This question comes from Heather.
What's up with pupper speech? This is different from Doge speech, like much wow, which is also annoying. But I hear people in real life talk like they are little baby dogs. Me was a good girl. Me want treaties from my human. Both while talking for pets or about pets and while trying to sound cute. It's like nails on a chalkboard for me.
Okay, is this
the
like
doggo
what
speech?
Is this?
Yeah.
No. Where does this come from?
Well, I mean, that directly comes from an internet aesthetic of a meme aesthetic of talking about dogs. But there is a real kind of grounding to why we talk to our puppies like they're children. Well, one, they do remind us of children. They have like big eyes and they look cute, and so we kind of revert to childlike tendencies. And there are there's shown to be like real psychological benefits to talking to your children like a sing-song voice. We naturally do that to our children, and there's a real evolutionary purpose behind that. So it makes sense that sometimes we'd get our wires crossed and also talk to puppies like that.
Is it like I Can Has cheeseburger? Like, is that like
it's similar? That's a cat
lineage?
meme, right? But it's it's in that sort of millennial humor aesthetic. But
can you
when I say words have vibes, words evolve and are shaped through underpinning aesthetics that like cultural attitudes toward what's funny or what's a good thing to look at or what's cool. All these affect our adoption of certain language.
Yeah. Can you tell? When, like, if you listen to someone for long enough, can you tell, like, if you were just, like, disembodied voice on a podcast, like, what generation they are? Or what generation of internet they were raised in?
I think there are some shibboleths. I mein, the fact I said crash out, like, 5 minutes ago, that clearly signals I'm a chronically online Gen Z TikTok person. Like, other people might not say that. Or if you use the word pupper, like, you're cooked. I just also outed myself by saying that. But...
Yes, pupper.
Or like the blue heart, red heart thing. They're like, I mean, linguistic forensics is like this field that like they can really pin down like your demographic and have you ever done the New York Times dialect quiz? This is a fascinating one. People should do this. It asks you 25 questions and it can tell exactly what city you're from. So it does these geographic shibboleths, but we also have social group shibboleths, like things that identify us. We all speak kind of uniquely based on our cultural background, our geographic location, all of that combined. And actually, now that's also understood by the algorithm. The algorithms like use emojis as a form of biopower. Like they analyze like your words to better target you. And now the fact that there's more words to analyze, like cottagecore, is just better for the algorithm.
How does it analyze our emojis?
It's a unique form of categorizing human emotion. It's a form of understanding. Like you can tell the social group someone's in from the emojis they're using. And algorithms do pay attention to that. If you upload a TikTok video using certain emojis, they know you're a certain kind of person.
What if I just use the gremlin emoji to like, whenever I talk about my dog, I use like the gremlin.
Well, they know you think that's a funny aesthetic to use.
Oh, that
and
makes
no,
sense.
again, I'm using like personifying language. I'm simplifying. It's very hard to avoid metaphorical kind of anthropomorphizations of the algorithm, which I do want to dispel. Like, that it's like a whole complicated series of processes that not even the engineers understand what's happening because it's called a black box. Once they program it, it's out of their control. But to simplify it, like I generally,
With your own work, and this is something I really admire about your book, and then also just like your videos generally, like most people who study algorithms are not also participating in them. And so you basically get to have like, you're an embedded researcher in a lot of ways. But what are you noticing right now with the algorithm that is confusing you, that is beguiling you? Like, what's interesting?
Yeah, I think the changed weightings on Instagram are something I'm really paying attention to, the proliferation of AI. They like AI. Think about everything comes down to their profit model. If you have more AI videos, there's less you have to pay creators. So it makes sense. Spotify is pushing AI-generated music in recommended playlists now. There's a Spotify bandwidth, I don't want to get the number wrong, something like 300,000 monthly listens, and it's completely AI-generated. And this is proven that they were doing
the
this.
One that sounds like it's like
classic
Crosby,
rock
Stills,
or
and
something.
Nash. Yeah. There's a great Switched on Pop episode about how you can find the tells for anything that's AI generated.
I'm so disillusioned with Spotify. I turned off the algorithm, because also here's another thing with algorithms: you lose the meaning of human curation. When you listen to an album top to bottom, there's a meta meaning in how it's organized. Somebody put it in that order for a meaning. Or when you listen to a mixtape or a playlist that somebody created with intent, there's some extra meaning, and that feels wonderful to me as a human that likes meaning. Like, that's what we do as humans. We look for meaning. Algorithms kind of suck that out by giving these recommended, there's no order, and then you stuff not even real human music into this. It feels worse for me as a human. I guess at the end of the day, I could just vibe and enjoy the music, which is
but that's elevator music, right? And this is why people call the Spotify algorithm effectively elevator music, is this idea that it's just a vibe. It's not actually taste. It's not even curating to your taste. It's trying to disappear in many ways.
Vibe.
It's trying to
however we're defining vibe. It's a psyop, if anything.
It is a psyop. This has been fantastic. If people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
My name's Etymology Nerd Online, but it's much better to buy the book Algospeak, where I'm less constrained by the algorithm. But thank you, yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Culture Study Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, because we have so many great episodes in the works, and I promise you don't want to miss any of them. If you want to suggest a topic, ask a question about the culture that surrounds you, or submit a question for our subscriber-only advice time segment, go to our Google form at tinyurl.com/culturestudypod, or check the show notes for a link. And if you want to support the show and get bonus content, head to culturestudypod.substack.com. It's $5 a month or $50 a year, and you'll get ad-free episodes, an exclusive advice time segment, and weekly discussion threads for each episode. The Culture Study Podcast is produced by me, Anne Helen Peterson, and Melody Rowell. Our music is by Poddington Bear. You can find me on Instagram at Anne Helen Peterson, Melody at Melodious47, and the show at Culture Study Pod.